Continue our conversation is New Mexico Senator Martin Heinrich. He is chair of the Congressional Joint Economic Committee. Senator, it's really a treat to be able to have you on our show today. Thank you. You've been pushing, I know, for a rate cut. Were you surprised that the Fed went as far as it did yesterday?
Yeah, I think a lot of people were expecting a quarter-point cut. I think a half-a-point cut is a much stronger signal, and this is great news for consumers. I mean, this will ease the pain that we've been feeling from the interest rates we've been operating under for many months now, but it also helps the economy because reducing these rates really does take some of the risk in the job market from high rates away. So this is across the board very good news.
Yeah, and we're looking at this graphic, Senator. I mean, from 2020, that 2022, 10 different times that the Feds decide to raise the rate of interest. What do you want to see from the Feds going forward?
Well, I want to see them do their job of both, balancing the interest rates with the job market. And I think that's what we saw in this case. I wish they would have started this process 3 months ago or 6 months ago, but I think it sends a very strong signal, the scale of the rate cut yesterday and the acknowledgement that there are additional cuts to come. So for consumers, and that's kind of how I like to measure the economy, is the impacts on individual consumers. This is good news.
Yeah, and, if we look at the impact, right, I mean, if you look at the trajectory, gas prices are heading down, food prices are finally starting to head down, mortgage rates heading down, still very high, but things are heading down. However, a recent New York Times Siena College poll found 76% of Americans rate the economy as either fair or poor. How do you explain that disconnect, Senator?
Well, those consumers have been living in, first, a high inflation environment as a result of COVID for several years. That translated then to a high interest rate environment. So they've been feeling the pinch for a number of years now. The good news is that both inflation and interest rates are headed down. So I think we're headed towards a much stronger economy in the future, especially from the point of view of individual consumers. The stock market is in a great place, and that's how a lot of my Republican colleagues measure the economy. What I care about is interest rates, what I care about is inflation, and what I care about is job numbers. And so we're headed to a much better place from the perspective of individual consumers.
I'm just wondering, do you see that the main issue with inflation was because of COVID? And is there any responsibility that you all in Washington have to the increase in inflation?
Well, I think one of the things that we learned from the complete destruction of our supply chains is that we need to make things in America again, especially mission-critical items. So passing things like the Chips and Science Act that actually gets us to make those chips in New Mexico again and in other places around the country, that's one of the ways that we insulate ourselves from the kind of supply chain disruption that raised inflation in every country on the globe. We've been able to manage it back down faster than any nation on the planet, but it still hurts, and so there is more work to be done.
And Senator, I know you also sit on the Intel Committee. Just yesterday, you held a hearing on foreign election interference. The FBI says Iran hacked into the Trump campaign, stole material, and then sent it to journalists and even the Biden and Harris campaigns. But I'm just wondering, so there's Iran, China, Russia, Cuba, all trying to interfere in our elections. Is there anything that can be done about this?
Well, I think the most important thing that can be done is what we did yesterday. We need to tell this story to the American public. Campaigns on every side of the aisle need to know that they're a target. We have these fake news sites popping up that purport to be the Washington Post or Fox News or other American outlets that are not. And we need to tell that story and work with the social media companies to take that content down. That is not free speech. When a foreign intelligence service puts things on the internet that are designed to impact our elections, they do not enjoy First Amendment protection. So getting the word out with the public is absolutely critical on this so that they know when they're being manipulated.
Senator Martin Heinrich, I thank you very much for being with us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.